In today's video, we're going to talk about 52 companies that actually announced raises in their dividends this week, 1 who announced a return on capital, 1 who had a decrease, and 5 companies that are actually doing share buybacks. So we're going to start here at Knight Swift Transportation, and they've announced a raise in their quarterly dividend by 16.7%. They have a forward yield of only 0.9%. They're going to go ex-dividend on March 2nd with a pay date on March 27th. Commerce Bank Shares is raising their quarterly dividend by 1.9%, giving them a forward yield of 1.6%. They'll go ex-dividend on March 6th with a pay date on March 27th. Otter Tail has announced a raise in their dividend by 6.1%, giving them a forward yield of 2.7%. They're going to go ex-dividend coming up on February 13th with a pay date on March 10th. Entravision is boosting their dividend by 100%, giving them a forward yield of 2.88%. They'll go ex-dividend coming up on March 15th with a pay date on March 31st. Moog announced a 3.8% dividend increase, bringing their yield to 1.14%. They'll go ex-dividend on February 16th with a pay date on March 6th. Brookfield Renewable Partners has announced an increase in their dividend by 5.5%. They'll go ex-dividend on February 27th and a pay date on March 31st, and they'll have a forward yield of 4.73%. Church & Dwight announced a 3.8% increase in their dividend, giving them a forward yield of 1.37%. They'll go ex-dividend on Valentine's Day on February 14th with a pay date on March 1st. Invitation Homes is raising their dividend by 18.2%, giving them a forward yield of 3.07%. They'll go ex-dividend on February 13th with a pay date on February 28th. Elite has announced an increase in their dividend by 4.28%, and ironically, their forward yield is 4.28%. They're going to go ex-dividend on February 14th with a pay date on March 1st. Cigna has announced a dividend increase by 9.8%, giving them a forward yield of 1.63. They're going to go ex-dividend on March 7th with a pay date on March 23rd. Parex Resources has announced an increase in their dividend by 50%, giving them a forward yield of 5.12%. They'll go ex-dividend on March 14th with a pay date on March 31st. Avista has announced an increase in their dividend by 4.5%, giving them a forward yield of 4.38%. They're going to go ex-dividend coming up on February 16th with a pay date on March 15th. Southside Bank Shares is raising their dividend by 2.9%, giving them a forward yield of 3.6%. They'll go ex-dividend on February 15th with a pay date on March 2nd. Camden Property Trust is raising their dividend by 6.4%, giving them a forward yield of 3.17%. They'll go ex-dividend on March 30th with a pay date on April 17th. We've got a 9.1% increase coming out of Microchip Technologies, which is going to give them a forward yield of 1.69%. They've got a pay date on March 7th if you're a shareholder of record on February 21st. And probably the most exciting dividend news this week is Polaris. They're giving each investor an additional penny for every share that they own. It gives them a forward yield of 2.19%. Ex-dividend date is on February 28th with a pay date on March 15th. Exponent, which just makes me think of the order of operations for math skills that I might have learned in middle school, is raising their dividend by 8.3%, giving them a forward yield just under 1%. They're going to go ex-dividend on March 9th with a pay date on March 24th. LPL Financial Holdings is raising their dividend by 20%, giving them a forward yield of 0.53%. They're going to go ex-dividend on March 13th with a pay date on March 28th. Gilead Sciences announced a dividend increase by 2.7%. They're going to have a forward yield of 3.69%, go ex-dividend on March 14th, and have a pay date on March 30th. For all you hot dog lovers out there, Nathan's Famous is raising their dividend by 11.1%. They'll have a forward yield of 2.78%, go ex-dividend on February 20th, and have a pay date on March 3rd. Intercontinental Exchange is boosting their dividend by 10.5%, giving them a forward yield of 1.54%. They'll go ex-dividend on March 16th with a pay date on March 30th. We got double-digit increases from Tradeweb Markets with a 12.5% increase to their dividend. The forward yield is 0.48%. They go ex-dividend on February 28th with a pay date on March 15th. CME is raising their dividend by 10%, giving them a forward yield of 2.51%. They're going to go ex-dividend on March 9th with a pay date on March 27th. Brookfield Infrastructure Partners is boosting their dividend by 6.3%, giving them a forward yield of 4.44%. They'll go ex-dividend on February 27th with a pay date on March 31st. This is the first company that we're going to talk about some buybacks with, and Quest Diagnostics is raising their dividend by 7.6%. They go ex-dividend on April 7th, pay date is on April 24th, and they're going to have a forward yield of 1.9%. And the best part is that the board of directors has just increased the company's share repurchase authorization by $1 billion. BCE just raised their dividend by 5.2%, giving them a forward yield of 6.12%. They'll go ex-dividend on March 14th with a pay date on April 17th. Shell is raising their dividend by 15%, giving them a forward yield of 3.94%. They're going to go ex-dividend on February 16th with a pay date on March 27th. We've got a 7.1% increase in dividend coming from Hawkins, and that's going to give them a forward yield of 1.5%. They're going to go ex-dividend on February 16th with a pay date on March 3rd. We've got a whopping 1% increase coming out of Blackstone, which gives them a forward yield of 4.1%. They're going to go ex-dividend on February 3rd with a pay date on February 13th. Aflac has announced a raise in their quarterly dividend by 4.5%, giving them a forward yield of 2.29%. They're going to go ex-dividend on February 14th with a pay date on March 1st. We've got a 5.9% increase coming out of Eversource Energy, giving them a forward yield of 3.26%. They're going to go ex-dividend on March 1st with a pay date on March 31st. CSB Bancorp announced a 2.9% increase this week, giving them a forward yield of 3.86%. They're going to go ex-dividend on March 6th with a pay date on March 21st. A couple things to talk about here at Schneider National. First being that they increased their dividend by 12.5%, and the second piece is that they've authorized a stock repurchase program for up to $150 million over the next 3 years. They've got a forward dividend yield of 1.31%, and they're going to go ex-dividend on March 9th with a pay date on April 10th. There is a really strong chance that I'm going to butcher this name, but I'm going to roll with it and call it Bank of Bodator, and they have increased their dividend by 4.1%, giving them a forward yield of 2.69%. They're going to go ex-dividend on February 10th with a pay date on February 17th. We've got a 7.4% increase to the dividend from Standard Motor Products, which is going to give them a forward yield of 2.87%. They'll go ex-dividend on February 14th with a pay date on March 1st. We've got a 33.3% dividend increase from Old Dominion Freight Line, giving them a forward yield of 0.48%. They'll go ex-dividend February 28th with pay date on March 15th. Postal Realty Trust is giving an increase of 1.1%, moving their forward yield up to 6.14%. Ex-dividend date is on February 14th with a pay date on February 28th. Shareholders of Valero Energy are going to be privy to a 4.1% increase to their divvy. This gives them a forward yield of 2.91%. Ex-dividend is February 13th with a pay date on March 16th. North European Oil Royalty Trust is increasing their dividend by 35.1%. This brings their forward yield up crazy high to 26.35%. They go ex-dividend on February 16th with a pay date on February 28th. We've got double-digit increases coming out of Magnolia Oil and Gas to the tune of 15%. Gives them a forward yield of 1.98%. They'll go ex-dividend February 9th with a pay date on March 1st. Another double-digit increase here with Shutterstock with a 12.5% increase in their dividend, giving them a forward yield of 1.49%. They'll go ex-dividend March 1st with a pay date on March 16th. Looks like we're on a roll with these double-digit increases. MSCI is increasing their dividend by 10.4%, giving them a forward yield of 1.09%. They'll go ex-dividend February 16th. Pay date is on February 28th. Here's another company offering a buyback. We've got UPS. Not only they're raising their dividend by 6.6%, gives them a forward yield of 3.66%, but we've got a $5 billion share repurchase authorization coming out of the UPS board of directors. They're going to go ex-dividend on February 17th with a pay date on March 10th. German American Bancorp is raising their dividend by 8.7%. This gives them a forward yield of 2.68%. They'll go ex-dividend February 9th with a pay date on February 20th. We've got a 25% increase from Meridian Bank, giving them a forward yield of 3.13%. They're going to go ex-dividend February 13th with a pay date on February 21st. Okay, semiconductor fans, we've got NXP raising their dividend by 20%. This gives them a forward yield of 2.26%. They'll go ex-dividend March 14th with a pay date on April 5th. Woodward is raising their dividend by 15.8%, giving them a forward yield just under 1% at 0.8. They go ex-dividend February 17th with a pay date on March 7th. We've got an 8.3% jump in the dividend from First Financial Northwest, which gives them a forward yield of 3.43%. They'll go ex-dividend March 13th with a pay date on March 24th. PB Financial is raising their dividend by 14.3%, giving them a forward yield of 3.75%. They'll go ex-dividend February 6th. Pay date is on February 23rd. I have two more buybacks that I wanted to share with you all. And the first one's coming from ExxonMobil. They declared their normal quarterly dividend, but they also announced a $35 billion cumulative share repurchase plan between the years of 2023 and 2024. And for shareholders of Marquette National, they're going to actually see that the company has authorized the repurchase of up to $1 million of its outstanding common stock. Our last bit of news today comes from Artisan Partners Asset Management, and they've actually reduced their dividend by 8.3%. However, they did announce a special dividend of 35 cents per share. And if you made it to the end of this, you're a diehard dividend investor just like me, and I really appreciate you. Now go and take a look at this video next.